originally from Haiti named Renee LaMayer, and they had kids. So they're living in the house with everyone else. It's getting very crowded. And Louis' widow suggested, I think it's time you could buy the plot next door, build your own house. So this is what we refer to as the Golden LaMayer house. Built about 1820. We usually put about a 2-year span, 1820, 22, just to be safe. So the thing that is pretty amazing about this house is how many different functions it's had besides being a residential home. So it looks, as you see it now structurally, when it was originally built, as successful financially as Louis was, once he died, they had some financial trouble. The house was foreclosed a few times. Several different families lived in here, but in 1839, the Catholic Church bought it. And this was actually a Catholic girls' school. There were about 45 students here on the first floor. And then they did outgrow the building. They moved to a brick academy. It doesn't stand anymore, a block north on Merchant Street. After that, residential a few more times. And then in 1849, Merchant purchased it. He widened it. He had a full second-story, double-decker balcony on the front, and this was a hotel for a long, long time. And then, believe it or not, in 1916 to about 1970, this was a Pontiac dealership, a auto body repair shop, and after World War II, they sold the surplus Willys Jeeps. And we do have a picture in the archives of what it looked like then, and it really does throw you for a loop. I don't know, people don't believe me, but I show them, like, look at it, and so it's kind of crazy. You see Bull Duke in the corner, and you see, like, Willys Jeep, and, all the cars parked out back. So when the Danes bought this house, they basically had to break it down, to a shell and go from there. But as you see it now, is what we interpreted would have looked like originally. Everything in the room, primarily the Indian rose pattern in China, was donated by the Mississippi Lime Company. And the gentleman in the painting, the original hangs in the museum. It used to be in this room, but better climate control over there. That is Jean-Baptiste Pratt, and he was a very close friend of Louis. He actually owned a general store, which was a brick building on the corner here. At one point, it was actually fused with this house. But this was done near the end of his life. He's holding the book, as I mentioned, the Old Duke House. We don't know for sure, but we think that it might be an Audubon. But since we don't have proper provenance on it, to be fair, you cannot say it is an Audubon. But it does resemble some of his earlier work before he went into painting birds. And he was never a resident of St. John, but he did pass through here with enough frequency that he would have been known in the area. And possibly this is done by him, about 1810. Still building houses like this. Once they found out, that they're earthquake proof, plus you save on timber building that way, they're still doing it. A lot of construction on this street around this time in the 1820s. The Linden House across the street, it's built in several different styles, but the food front door to the right is the most original, and it is worked the wall. You can see that, but it's been kind of Americanized. But small exhibit you see here used to encompass the whole room. It was supposed to be temporary, but it is important that we talk about slavery in our narrative, because for a long time, and I'm talking long before I worked here, they were really downplaying it. They were saying, yes, we had slavery, in Louisiana, but it was different. It's not what you think. It's like, well, what does that mean? So really what they're referring to is the code of law on the left side there. And that shows you how Spain administered slavery. I don't know exactly why, but they did tweak certain things. It's not to say they had rights by any means, but off the top of my head, to name a few, African men could serve in the militia and carry firearms, and that's unheard of anywhere else. They never split children away from a mother in an auction. Slaves could work on Sundays, and they did not have to work on Sundays, and if they did, they got paid for it. They could emancipate themselves. They could, work up and buy their freedom. The earliest that I've ever personally heard of slaves being in the area, nothing was here at that point, but it was in 1719. So, over a decade before St. John was founded in Old Town. But they came to work in the lead mines. And what's amazing to me is I've read that when they came, some of them were already emancipated. They already earned their freedom. I had never heard of anyone doing that early. But they came, they got paid, and that really confused the Native Americans. They're so used to seeing them change. So I believe, it sounds weird, but I believe I've read they call them free white men. But I always tell people with this wall, if there's two things to take away, it's the code noir and then the list of buyers and sellers, because you will see some names on there that I mentioned throughout the tour. Louis' name is about fifth from the bottom. And you'll see both English and French names and Spanish. The gentleman in the painting I just pointed out, he's actually the great-great-great-grandfather of our record operations. They have the same last name. I gave a tour one time to a French linguist. She was nice about it. She was telling me, you're missing the little, above. And I did tell her, I said, well, we're getting this from a cursive ledger, but it really does put a human, spin on it when you see the names that I'm talking about. And at one point, our narrative that we cover really goes from about 1719 to 1820s. The African population of St. John is 40%. That's high. And I say African because they were never brought north-south. They were always brought from Africa up through the Dutch West Indies and then south-north. And you'll see, it's not on here anymore, I know it's on old exhibit. You would see weird things in probate records when they, were fighting on someone's property. So-and-so gets half a slave. And it looks funny on paper, but really what that is split ownership. Half time with this, other half that way. I should have mentioned it out on the galleries, but this ceiling is painted a similar color to what they would often paint the ceiling of the gallery. The first house on the corner over here, the Jean-Baptiste house, has it, and it's a Haitian thing that it's supposed to confuse the bugs for the sky, and they won't, burrow into it. It doesn't look kind of, wasps all the time. The yarn winder here, believe it or not, we have in one of our cases at the museum a blanket that was made on this in the 20th century. And it's had a lot of work done. It has both the wooden pegs and various different nails. So it's a very good way to determine just how old it is. I mean, you can see this is a branch, basically. But this belongs to the Bowling family. We have it on loan. But it just goes to show you how they can take these old items and still know how to make them work. Does anybody have changed around a lot in terms of how this room originally looked. We added, this is what's called a game table. So one of the legs does fold up and it folds down. You can move against the wall, kind of like a low arm bar. And we have it set up, these are reproduction cards, but we have it set up to play Pharaoh, which I didn't know they played Pharaoh back then. I always associate Pharaoh with like Tombstone, Arizona and stuff like that. Yeah, apparently they were playing. And this one's back over there. Nice look. I live in St. Louis, but when I stay overnight, I stay in that house because it's modern on the inside. But if you go in the basement, it's really kind of cool. It's on certain parts, it's dirt floor, and the basement covers the whole house, so it's huge. And you could see in one of the rooms where the original floorboards are, and they're like paper mache. They're so thin now. 225 years old.
Oof.
Thank you all. I enjoyed that.
Thank you.
Absolutely, thank you.
Very good.
Good tour. Oh yeah.
It was.
Very good.
Everyone going back to the museum?
Ooh, think so?
When we first opened, we do have periodically people who come in and like, I used to work in this is my office. I got my first, home mortgage. People would come in when we first opened and they think it was an insurance agency. It's like you're getting close.